I don't think there's any other question I can delegate. There is an organization, intergovernmental organization called the South Center. It's basically a think tank to help the countries of the South, particularly as they negotiate with the countries of the North on a whole range of issues, any issue, health, education, whatever. So the South Center was established some time back, led by the late Julius Nyerere. It's headquartered in Geneva, and the reason for that is because a lot of the United Nations negotiations take place in Geneva. So it has to be there to be able to support the countries of the South as they engage in those negotiations. Now, it so happens that I'm the chair of the board of the South Center, which is meeting I hope I've got the dates right, in Geneva. And I suspect that on the 29th, I'll be in Geneva for that. So you might not see me at the sword turning. That's not because I don't support the project. Tsepo asked a question at the other Tsepo, question about crime. Very, very correct, very important issue. And I really wish, Tsepo, that you could have continued to indicate what you think we should do about this question of crime. Because it is not an easy question and needs a lot of thinking. Vice Chancellor, you remember there was an occasion here, we were celebrating the 150th anniversary of the university. And sitting somewhere here was General Libya, the head of the Hawks. And I said to him, I was very glad to see him. And fortunately, we had lunch together, sitting next to each other after that. And I told him that the reason I was glad to see him is because I wanted to ask him exactly the same question. And I said, General, what do we do about these intolerably high levels of crime? And he agreed. He agreed that he was ready to come whenever I asked him to give me his own answer to that question. It's a very serious issue. I think all of us would agree. But it's very difficult to answer the question, what is to be done? I'm currently reading a book which deals with trade in narcotics. And I'm learning a great deal about this. That South Africa is linked to many countries which have got this problem of drugs. Brazil, Bolivia, Belgium, all sorts of places. And there are huge volumes of drugs that come through this country. Cocaine from Latin America, heroin from the East, Afghanistan and those places, Pakistan. And clearly I'm learning a lot about this matter about drug dealing on that global scale. But despite that, if you ask me now, well, what do we do about it? I wouldn't know how to answer that question. It's one of these issues that I think requires a lot of thinking. And part of the challenge with it is that there is too much of the blame by the population that points fingers at the South African Police Service. So this is the principal instrument that as a country we have to combat crime. But if the people are correct in saying that a lot of the problem arises from the fact that this instrument of ours is ineffective, that in fact many of them, well, let me say some, of the police officers are themselves involved in crime, then I'm saying again, it becomes very difficult to answer the question, what is to be done? I've heard people say that, why doesn't the Minister of Police allow the National Commissioner to comment on these crimes? He's the first one everywhere. If they steal my boots, he'll be the first one there. Why? I'm saying people raise those questions. I was saying to General Libya that many years ago we discussed policing. This is before '94. And one of the things that we said was that we don't like the SAP, that institution, South African Police, of the apartheid system. But we are going to need policing. So what are we going to do? Excuse me. So one of the things we decided was that we must redefine the task of the police. The task of the police under the apartheid system largely had been to arrest people, knock them on the head, lock them up and all. It was an enemy force against the people, certainly the black oppressed. Now we wanted a police service which would be a friend of the people, not an enemy of the people. So we said the first thing to do, whereas the apartheid system called these generals and colonels and the brigadiers and these categories are categories that belong to the army. We don't want a police service that is military. So that's why we removed all of these ranks. And that's why even in the Constitution, the National Commissioner of Police is the National Commissioner of Police. It's still called National Commissioner to this day. No generals there. And then one day, Comrade J.Z. Zuma addressed a meeting in Soweto and said, these ranks, commissioner and superintendent and so on, these are not, the police are faced with criminals. And the criminals must shake in their boots when they see a police officer. And they'll shake if it's a general, not if it's a national commissioner. So that's how the ranks changed to what they are now. And I'm fighting that they must go back to where they were. The police must be civilian police, not military police. That's part of the answer to the question, what do we do with crime?